Raining again in San Francisco. I held my small bag close and walked fast. My shoes were old, and the cold wind touched my face. I had only $20 in my pocket. My mother was sick. We had no food left at home. I looked around and whispered to myself, "Please, God, give me one job today." Then I saw a big iron gate. On the board it said, "Help wanted, made immediate." My heart started beating fast. Maybe this was the chance I needed. I went inside. The house looked silent, almost like it was sleeping. I knocked once, then again. A tall man opened the door. His eyes looked tired, like he had not slept for many nights. His voice was deep. "Yes?" he said. I held my breath and spoke softly. "Sir, I came for the job." He looked at me for a long second. Then he said, "Come tomorrow at 8. Be on time." He closed the door slowly. I stood there for a moment, not sure if it was real. I whispered, "Thank you." That night I told my mother, "I got work." She smiled weakly. Her voice was low. "Work hard, my Lena. Don't lose your kindness. I promised her I wouldn't." Next morning I reached the mansion early. A woman opened the door and told me where to start. I cleaned tables, washed dishes, and folded clothes. Everything was big and quiet. The house had many rooms but felt empty. No laughter, no music, only footsteps. At lunchtime I saw him again, Mr. Ethan Gray. He sat alone near the window, reading papers. He did not look up. I placed the tray quietly and said, "Your coffee, sir." He nodded but said nothing. I watched him for a moment. His eyes looked lost, somewhere far away. Days passed like that. He never smiled, never asked anything. But one evening, when I was cleaning the study, I found a photo on the floor. It was of a woman and a small boy. The woman was beautiful and happy. I gently kept the photo on his desk. When he came in, he asked, "Did you touch this?" I said softly, "It was on the floor, sir." For a few seconds, he looked straight into my eyes. There was no anger, only sadness. Then he turned away and said, "You can go." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his face. I felt he was broken inside. Maybe he missed that woman. Maybe she was his wife. I didn't know why I cared, but I did. Next morning, I saw him standing near the door. He said quietly, "You work hard." I smiled a little. "Thank you, sir." It was the first time he said something kind. My heart felt warm. One day, while dusting the shelves, I heard a small sound behind me. A glass had fallen from his hand and broken. Blood came from his finger. I ran to him. "Wait, sir," I said, and took a cloth. He looked surprised. I pressed the cloth on his hand. "It will stop soon," I said. He kept watching me silently. Then he whispered, "You're not afraid of me?" I smiled. "Why should I be?" He didn't reply, but I saw something change in his eyes, a small light, like hope trying to return. He said softly, "Thank you, Lena." Hearing my name from his lips felt strange, almost sweet. That evening I told my mother, "He is not a bad man, Ma. He is only lonely." She smiled. "Then make his world bright again, my child." I laughed. "I'm just a maid." She said, "Sometimes maids fix hearts too." Her words stayed in my mind. From that day, I decided I would not only clean his house, I would bring life back to it. I didn't know that the same house would later test my courage, my heart, and everything I believed about love. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website, bookishenglish.com. Link in the description. Chapter 2. The Man Who Never Smiled. Days passed slowly in the mansion. I worked from morning to night. I washed dishes, ironed clothes, and made tea for Mr. Gray. He always sat alone, reading papers or staring out the window. His silence filled every room. Sometimes I wanted to ask, "Are you okay, sir?" But I never did. I was just a maid. One evening, while I was serving coffee, he suddenly asked, "How is your mother?" I looked up, surprised. "She is better now," I said. He nodded and said, "Good." That one word felt warm. For the first time, he looked like a man who wanted to talk, not a boss giving orders. After that day, he changed a little. Some mornings, he said good morning. Sometimes he left a note that said, "Thank you." I could see he was trying. I started feeling happy when he was kind. My mother said on the phone, "He sounds like a lonely man. Maybe he needs someone to remind him of life again." I smiled and said, "Maybe." Lone afternoon, I found him sitting in the living room, looking at that same photo again, the woman and the boy. He didn't notice me at first. Then he said softly, "She was my wife. She and my son died in an accident." I froze. I didn't know what to say. He looked at me with tired eyes. "After that, I stopped believing in peace," he whispered. My eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sir," I said. He just nodded and turned away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about his words. A strong man, full of money, still broken inside. It felt unfair. I promised myself I would try to bring a little light back to his life. Maybe he would smile again someday. The next week, he got very busy. Some men started coming to meet him late in the evening. They wore suits and spoke in low voices. I was told to leave early those days, but once I forgot my bag and came back. I heard one of them say, "Mark, you should not do this inside the house." Another man replied, "Relax, Ethan doesn't know a thing." I didn't understand what they meant, but I felt something wrong. When I saw Ethan later that night, his face looked tense. He said quietly, "Lena, if anyone comes asking about me, tell them I'm not here." I nodded. My heart was beating fast. Something was happening, and I didn't know what. A few days later, Ethan fell sick. He had a fever and couldn't go to work. I made soup for him and gave him medicine. He looked at me and said, "You don't have to do all this." I smiled and said, "Someone has to take care of you." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he said softly, "No one said that to me in years." I felt my throat close. "You should hear it more often," I replied. He smiled, just a small one. But it was the first real smile I had ever seen on his face. That moment stayed with me. I didn't want to tell anyone, but I was beginning to care for him more than I should. Next morning, while cleaning his study, I saw a file open on his desk. The paper had some strange words written. Loan, transfer, signature pending. I closed it quietly, but later, when he saw me there, he looked worried. "Did you read anything?" he asked. I said, "No, sir." He took a deep breath and said, "Good. Just be careful around my office, okay?" I nodded, but I felt his fear. That night he didn't eat dinner. He stayed in his room. I heard him talking on the phone. His voice was low but sharp. "If you cross me again, I'll end the deal." Then silence. I stood near the door and listened. My hands were shaking. Who was he talking to? Why was he angry? When I went to my room, I called my mother. "Something feels wrong," I said. "He is in trouble. I can feel it." She said, "Pray for him." "Good people always face tests," I whispered. "I think he's better than he knows." Next morning, Ethan looked tired. His eyes were red. But when he saw me, he said softly, "Thank you for staying." I didn't understand what he meant, but those words touched me. In the evening, I walked into the kitchen and found a note on the table. It said, "Thank you for the soup. You remind me that not everything is lost." I read that note again and again. For the first time, I felt he saw me not as a maid, but as a person. I didn't know that behind his quiet smile, a storm was waiting to come. Something was breaking inside his world, and soon it would pull both of us into a truth we were not ready for. Chapter 3. The Night of the Broken Glass. Mr. Gray was working late again. The light under his study door showed he hadn't slept. I finished cleaning and went to leave, but I heard a sound, something falling, a sharp crash. My heart jumped. I ran inside. A glass was broken on the floor. He was standing there, blood on his hand. "Wait, sir," I said quickly. I tore a piece from my apron and held it on his cut. "You should sit." He looked at me like he wanted to say something but couldn't. His voice was low. "You're not afraid of me, Lena?" I shook my head. "No, sir. I just don't like seeing anyone hurt." He watched me for a long second. Then he said quietly, "No one ever talks to me like that anymore." His eyes looked soft, almost human again. I smiled a little. Maybe they should. I cleaned the blood and threw the glass pieces away. He whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time he said my name again. I went to my room, but I couldn't sleep. My heart felt heavy. I kept thinking, why does he look so sad even when someone helps him? Next morning, he called me to his office. I stood nervously. He said, "I spoke harshly yesterday." "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "Please don't say sorry, sir." "You were hurt." He gave a small smile. "Still, thank you for caring." I left the room, my heart beating fast. A few days later, I noticed he started talking more. He asked small things like, "Did you have breakfast?" Or, "Is your mother doing better?" I always said yes, and every time he nodded slowly, as if my answers mattered. One evening, while bringing tea, I saw him sitting with Mark Benson, his friend from the company. Mark smiled too much. His voice sounded fake. He said, "Ethan, you need to sign those papers soon, or the deal will fall apart." Ethan replied, "I'll check them first." Mark laughed lightly. "You still don't trust me?" Ethan didn't answer. I quietly left, but I saw worry on Ethan's face. That night, I walked past the study again. The door was half open. He was sitting there with his head in his hands. He looked so tired. I wanted to say something. Instead, I whispered softly, "Everything will be fine, sir." He turned, surprised that I was there. "Do you really think so?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, you are a good man." He smiled weakly. Good people still make mistakes. Next morning, something strange happened. The police came to the gate asking for Mr. Gray. They left soon, but I saw fear in his eyes afterward. He called Mark, and they talked in another room. I heard Mark say, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." Later that day, Ethan forgot his phone on the table. A message appeared. It said, "Transfer complete. Keep him quiet." My hands shook. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt danger. I put the phone back where it was. My mind was full of questions. That night, he didn't come for dinner. I left food outside his door. When I turned to go, I heard him whisper from inside, "Maybe I'm losing everything again." My eyes filled with tears. He didn't deserve another loss. Next morning, he looked pale. He said softly, "Lena, if something ever happens to me, don't believe everything people say." I didn't understand. "Why would something happen, sir?" He smiled sadly. "Because in this world, truth doesn't protect you." His words stayed in my mind all day. The same evening, I saw Mark walking out fast holding a folder. He didn't see me. I felt a chill. I went to the study and saw papers on the floor. Ethan was standing near the window. "Everything okay, sir?" I asked. He turned and said, "Yes." "Just some business pressure," I nodded, though I knew he was lying. At night, I found one paper half burned in the trash. It had strange numbers and the word account on it. I didn't touch it, but I took a photo secretly. I didn't know why I did it. Something inside told me that one day this proof would matter. When I went to my room, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Are you safe?" she asked. I said, "Yes, Ma, but I think my boss is in trouble." She said softly, "Then pray for him. Maybe you are sent there to help him." I looked out the window and whispered, "Maybe I am." That night, I couldn't sleep. I felt his pain, his fear, and something else I didn't want to name. I cared for him deeply, more than a maid should care for her boss. But love doesn't ask for permission. It just grows silently. I didn't know that very soon everything would break again, like that glass on the floor, and I would have to choose between saving my job or saving him. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website bookishenglish.com. Link in the description. Chapter 4. Secrets in the Shadows. After that night, everything started to feel strange. Ethan spoke less. He stayed in his study for long hours and barely ate. I could see something was wrong, but he didn't say a word. Sometimes I heard him talking on the phone, his voice low and tense. "No one must find out," he said once. I froze behind the door, my heart pounding. Who was he hiding from? One evening, I was leaving his room when I saw Mark Benson again. He was smiling like always, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. He said, "Still here, Lena. You must like this job a lot." His tone felt wrong. I just nodded and walked away. As I turned, I heard him whisper to Ethan, "Sign it tomorrow." "We can't delay." Ethan's voice was tired. "I need more time, Mark." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about their talk. What were those papers? And why did Mark sound nervous? I told myself not to get involved, but I couldn't help it. Something inside me said Ethan was in danger. Next morning, he looked pale. "Did you sleep, sir?" I asked. He said softly, "I don't sleep much these days." I smiled a little. "You should try. Even strong people need rest." He looked at me for a moment and said, "You believe I'm strong?" I nodded. "I've seen worse days, sir. But you still stand tall." He smiled faintly. "You talk like someone who has seen pain." I said quietly, "I have." Later that day, I found him sitting alone again. I wanted to make him smile. I said, "You never told me what your favorite food is." He looked confused, then laughed for the first time. "I don't remember anymore," he said. I laughed too. That small moment felt warm, but it didn't last. The phone rang and his face changed. He said quickly, "I have to go." Lock the door after me. After he left, I went to clean his study. On the table, one paper was left open. It had Mark's name signed at the bottom. The words said, "Private Transfer Agreement." My stomach turned. I took a photo quietly with my phone. My hands were shaking. That night, I saw Mark come again. He went into Ethan's office. I hid behind the stairs. I heard him say, "If anyone finds out, we both go down." Ethan said, "I don't care about myself. I only care about the truth." Mark replied coldly, "Truth won't save you this time." My breath stopped. I knew now that something serious was happening. When they left, I went inside the study again. A folder was half open on the desk. Inside were photos of company checks, some signed by Ethan, some by Mark. But the signatures looked different. Someone had copied them. My heart pounded. Could someone be trying to frame him? The next day, Ethan didn't go to work. He sat quietly during breakfast. I wanted to tell him what I saw, but was afraid. Then he said slowly, "Lena, do you think people can change?" I said softly, "Only if they want to." He looked away. "Sometimes it's too late." I didn't know what he meant. but the sadness in his voice made my eyes wet. In the evening, Mark came again, but this time he didn't smile. He looked angry. He said, "Ethan, they're asking questions. You better fix this." Ethan stood up. "I've done nothing wrong." Mark's tone turned hard. "Then you'll go down for my mistake." He left the house without another word. I was hiding in the corner. My hands felt cold. I walked into the study after Ethan left. I saw his phone buzzing. A message appeared. It said, "Finish it before she finds out." I felt my heart stop. Who was she? Was it me? That night I prayed for him. I said softly, "Please God, don't let anything bad happen to him." I didn't know why I cared so much, but I did. I couldn't stop myself anymore. I was falling for a man who didn't even know how to smile, and maybe never would again. Next morning, something shocking happened. Ethan didn't come downstairs. His car was gone, but his phone was still on the table. A call came from an unknown number. I answered. A man said, "Tell Ethan his time is up." The call ended before I could reply. My whole body shook. When he returned that evening, his face looked different. Tired, angry, scared. I asked softly, "Are you okay, sir?" He said, "No one is okay forever, Lena." His eyes met mine, and I saw pain deeper than before. "If I disappear someday," he said quietly, "remember you once saw me as a good man." I felt tears in my eyes. "You still are," I whispered. He turned away and said nothing, but I knew he heard me. That night the wind outside was strong. I couldn't sleep. Something inside told me the next few days would change everything, for him and for me. I didn't know yet that I was about to lose everything I cared about, just to save the man who had already lost too much. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website, bookishenglish.com. Link in the description. Chapter 5. Framed. The next morning felt heavy. Ethan didn't come downstairs again. I made breakfast and waited, but he never appeared. My heart said something bad had happened. I walked to his study and knocked softly. No answer. When I opened the door, he was sitting still, holding a letter. His face was white. He said in a broken voice, "They're taking everything from me." I stepped closer. "What happened, sir?" He looked up slowly. "The company. They're saying I stole money. They have proof with my signature." My eyes widened. "But that's not true." He laughed sadly. "Truth doesn't matter when lies have evidence." Before I could speak, we heard a knock. 2 police officers entered. They said they needed to ask questions about company fraud. Ethan didn't resist. He just stood up quietly. When they walked him out, he looked at me once. That look stayed in my heart. Tired, helpless, and full of pain. As the door closed behind them, I felt something break inside me. I sat on the floor and cried. My mother called, but I couldn't speak. I only said, "They took him." That night I couldn't eat. I kept replaying everything in my mind. Mark's visits, the messages, the fake papers. It all made sense now. Mark had done this. Ethan had trusted the wrong man. I opened my phone and looked at the photos I had taken. The one with Mark's signature, the half-burnt paper, and the message, "Finish it before she finds out." I realized I had proof. Maybe not enough, but something. I whispered, "I'll save you, sir." "I promise." Next morning, I went to the company office pretending to deliver files. I saw Mark there, talking and smiling like nothing happened. My heart burned with anger. I followed him quietly when he left. He went to a small warehouse near the bridge. I hid behind a wall and listened. He was talking to another man. "Once Gray is done, the company is ours," he said. The man replied, "What about the maid? She's been asking questions, Mark laughed. She's just a girl. She won't do anything. My hands were shaking, but I took a photo of them together. Then I heard a noise. A box fell behind me. Mark turned. Who's there? I ran as fast as I could. He shouted, Lena, stop right there. My legs hurt, but I didn't stop. I reached the main road and jumped into a taxi. My phone almost slipped from my hand. I whispered, Please, God, keep me safe. That night, I went to the police station. I showed them the photos and the messages. The officer looked at me with doubt. You're just a maid, he said. Why are you so sure? I replied, because I know him. He can be cold, but he's not a liar. They checked my photos and told me to wait. Hours passed. Then one officer came out and said, We'll look into it. I went home, scared but hopeful. The next day, I visited the hospital. Ethan was sitting there, silent, his eyes empty. I said softly, You didn't do anything wrong. I'll prove it. He didn't answer. He just looked at me and whispered, Why would you care, Lena? My voice broke. Because I believe in you. I believe in what's good inside you. He closed his eyes and said, No one ever said that to me before. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I held his hand. You will be free soon, sir. I'll bring back your truth. That evening, the police called. They said they had found a bank account in Mark's name using Ethan's fake signature. My chest filled with relief. The next day, Mark was arrested. Ethan was free again. When he came home, I opened the door for him. He looked tired but calm. You did it, he said. You saved me. I smiled through tears. You would have done the same. He shook his head. I'm not sure. But I'll never forget this, I said softly. You don't have to thank me. You once told me truth doesn't protect anyone. Now you know it can. He looked at me with a small smile. You're different, Lena. You make me want to believe again. For the first time, I saw peace in his eyes. It was small, but real. The nightmare was ending. Yet deep in my heart, I knew another storm was waiting, one that could destroy both of us if the truth from the past ever came out. Chapter 6. The Warehouse. Chase. Ethan was free, but he didn't look happy. He looked lost. The news said his name was cleared, yet his eyes still carried fear. When he came home, the house was quiet. He sat down slowly and said, I don't know how to thank you, Lena. I said softly, You don't have to. I just did what was right. He looked away. People don't risk their lives for others like that. I smiled a little. Maybe I'm not like most people. He gave a small laugh, then sighed. Mark will pay for this, he said. I replied, Forget him, sir. You have your life back. He said quietly, Maybe. But something feels unfinished. I didn't understand what he meant. Later that night, I heard a sound outside the gate. Someone threw a stone at the door with a note attached. It said, You saved the wrong man. The real truth is still hidden. I froze. Who wrote it? I ran to Ethan's room and showed him the note. He read it slowly and said, Someone doesn't want us to move on. I asked, Do you know what they mean? He shook his head. No, but I think Mark wasn't working alone. The next day, I went to the police to ask if Mark said anything. The officer told me Mark refused to speak. But there was one clue, a phone call made to a warehouse number before his arrest. My mind flashed back to that place where I followed him before. I told Ethan, maybe someone else is hiding there. He didn't want me to go, but I said, We need to end this. That evening, I went to the same warehouse again. The lights were dim. My hands were cold, but I walked inside quietly. I heard voices. One man said, We should destroy the papers before anyone finds them. I looked closer and saw two men taking out files from a box. I took my phone and started recording, but then my foot hit a metal piece. The noise echoed. They turned around. "Who's there?" one of them shouted. I ran. My heart was beating fast. One man chased me. I slipped and fell, hurting my arm. He caught my scarf and said angrily, "You shouldn't have come here, maid." I struggled and kicked him. "You ruined everything," he shouted. I screamed, "You ruined an innocent man's life." Then I hit him with a wooden stick lying nearby and ran out. Outside, I saw a police car. The officer I met earlier was there. He shouted, "Lena, move away." They caught both men. I sat down, shaking. The officer said, "You're lucky." These men were destroying fake documents that showed Ethan as guilty. Tears came to my eyes. "So it's really over now?" He nodded. "Yes. You did it again." When Ethan came to the station, I was sitting quietly. He walked to me and said softly, "You keep saving me, Lena. I don't deserve this." I looked at him with tears. "Don't say that. You deserve peace." He whispered, "I don't know how to live anymore." I said, "Then learn again. Start with one smile." He smiled, a real one. It was small, but it felt like the world changed in that moment. He touched my shoulder gently and said, "You're the bravest person I've ever met." I replied, "You're not bad at being human either." We both laughed softly. The fear between us finally broke. From that day, things started to heal. Ethan got his company back. He also helped the police catch others who were involved with Mark. I went back to working for him, but everything felt different. He wasn't just my boss anymore. He was someone who cared. One night, while I was leaving, he said quietly, "Stay for dinner." I looked surprised. "Dinner, sir?" He smiled and said, "No, sir. Just Ethan." I laughed and said, "Okay." Ethan. That simple word made his eyes warm. I didn't know where our story would go next, but I knew one thing for sure. After all the darkness, a little light had finally entered both our hearts. Chapter 7. The love I never expected. Days turned into weeks, and slowly everything began to change. Ethan was no longer the same man who hid behind silence. He started talking more, laughing sometimes, even helping me in small things. I had never seen him this calm before. One evening, he said, "Lena, I still can't believe all that happened. You could have left, but you stayed." I smiled softly, "Because I wanted to see you smile again." He looked at me for a moment and said, "You have strange reasons. You know that?" I laughed. "Maybe that's what makes me me." We began having dinner together sometimes. He told me about his wife and son. His voice always broke a little when he spoke of them. He said, "I thought love ended with their death." I said quietly, "Love never ends. It only changes shape." He stared at me silently, then whispered, "You talk like you've lost someone too." I looked down. I lost peace for many years, but I found it here. Our days became lighter. He started waiting for my morning greetings. He told me, "You bring life into this house, Lena." I said, "No, Ethan, you brought me here, remember?" He smiled and said, "Maybe fate brought you." Those words stayed with me all night. One morning, I was preparing breakfast when he came to the kitchen. "I have something for you," he said. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from the hospital. It said my mother's treatment would be paid in full by him. I looked at him with tears. "Why would you do this?" He said softly, "Because you've done more for me than anyone ever has." I hugged the letter to my chest and whispered, "Thank you." After that, our bond grew quietly. It was not like the love stories from books. It was simple. It was two broken hearts learning how to beat again. Sometimes he would look at me while I worked and say nothing, but his silence spoke more than words. Then, one evening he came home with a small smile and said, "You won't believe this. The company is finally safe." "Everything is clear now," I said. "That's good news." He nodded. "Yes, but I'm thinking of starting a new department, and I want you to manage it." I looked at him shocked. "Me?" He said, "You're smart and loyal. I trust you." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking how strange life was. The man who once scared me was now the one who made me feel safe. I looked out the window and whispered, "I think I love him." My heart raced after saying those words aloud. The next day, I found him waiting for me in the garden. He said, "Lena, I was thinking, maybe you should take a break." "Go see your mother." I said, "I'll go soon, but I don't want to be away for long." He smiled. "Why?" I hesitated, then said softly, "Because this place feels like home now." He didn't reply, but I saw his eyes fill with emotion. He stepped closer and said, "You're special, Lena. You changed me without even trying." I felt tears in my eyes. "I didn't change you, Ethan. I only reminded you of who you really are." He smiled. "And what if I say I don't want to lose you now?" For a few seconds, time felt still. My voice shook. "Then don't." He took my hand slowly, his eyes warm and honest. "You came here as a maid," he said, "but you became the reason I believe in love again." My tears finally fell. I said, "And you became the reason I stopped feeling small." He held my hand tighter. "So what happens now?" he asked. I smiled softly. "We start again." This time, without pain, he nodded. "I would like that." We stood there quietly, two people who had lost so much but found each other by chance. I knew life would never be the same again, but I also knew love had finally entered our story, slow, pure, and real. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website bookishenglish.com, link in the description. Chapter 8. The Truth That Almost Broke Us. Everything looked peaceful again, but sometimes peace hides storms. One morning, I was sorting the mail when I saw an envelope with no name. I opened it without thinking. Inside was a single paper. It said, "Your father didn't die in an accident. Ask Ethan about it." My hands went cold. I read it again and again. My father? Ethan? How could that even be connected? When Ethan came home that evening, I showed him the letter. His face changed. He sat down slowly and said nothing. I whispered, "Please tell me this isn't true." He closed his eyes. "It's not what you think." My voice shook. "Then tell me what I should think." He looked at me with pain. "Your father worked for my company years ago. The night he died, he was trying to stop the same man who ruined me, Mark." I felt like the ground moved under my feet. "You knew this all along?" I asked. He nodded weakly. "I found out later. I didn't know how to tell you. I stepped back. You let me live here, work for you, love you, while hiding this?" Tears filled my eyes. He said, "I was afraid of losing you." I shouted softly, "You lost me by hiding the truth." I went to my room and cried. Everything felt broken again. The man I trusted most had been part of the same world that destroyed my father. I packed my bag to leave, but my heart wouldn't let me. He wasn't evil. He was human. Still, the pain was too much. That night, I got a call from the police. They told me one more man from Mark's group had been caught. He said something that made my blood freeze. Lena's father died saving Ethan's money files. He was loyal till the end. I dropped the phone. My father died protecting Ethan, not fighting him. The truth was different. Next morning, I went to see Ethan. He looked pale and tired. I said quietly, "You should have told me sooner." He said, "I wanted to, but every time I looked at you, I saw guilt." I sat beside him. "You don't need to feel guilty. My father would have done the same again." He looked at me with tears. "How can you forgive me so easily?" I smiled softly. "Because I know you now. You make mistakes, but your heart is good." He held my hand and whispered, "You saved me twice, once from the world and now from myself." He stood up slowly and said, "I have something to show you." He took me to his office and gave me a paper. It said, "The Thomas Miller Foundation." My eyes widened. "That's my father's name." He nodded. "I started this in his memory. It will help poor workers' families. It's my way of saying sorry." Tears rolled down my face. I hugged the paper and said, "He would be proud of you." Ethan smiled faintly. "And I'm proud of you, Lena." That evening, we sat together in silence. No big words, no promises, just peace. He said quietly, "I don't know if I deserve you." I said, "You don't need to deserve love. You just need to protect it." He smiled and said, "Then I'll protect you forever." We both looked at each other for a long time. Our lives had been full of pain and lies, but somehow love found its way. I had come to his house as a maid, but I was leaving this chapter of life as his heart. I whispered softly,